Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to another show of Strength in the Numbers. Our guest mentor today is Angela Ho, who's Senior Vice President and Principal Accounting Officer at OceanFirst Bank. Now, Angela is an up-and-coming female accounting and finance executive within financial services, and she was recently nominated to a list of new leaders in banking. We have a fantastic conversation to Angela and I. We cover a number of really interesting topics relevant to our audience, in particular two ways how we can display more confidence in our roles. We also discuss the mindset shift on how we can contribute more to our top line performance at our companies. Then Angela shares some terrific advice and loads of practical guidance for young female executives wishing to progress their careers, and rather importantly as well, how to remain goal orientated but not lose sight of what's important in life as well. So there's loads of value in this show. If you want to check out the detailed show notes, go to sitnshow.com/podcast/038. There you'll get the timestamp show notes, quotes from the conversation, resources Angela recommends, and also how to connect with her. So without further ado, over to Angela and the show.
I've been an accountant for over, getting close to the 15-year mark now. And I never really thought this day would come. I was straight out in undergrad, and I wanted to major in psychology, actually. And my father, who has had many years of experience in the finance and business world, sneakily slipped me a U.S. News article showing a list of college majors in relation to the amount of annual earnings upon graduation from with their undergraduate degree. And I noticed that this was very early on in my college career, where he sent this to me, and I saw that I'd have to work very, very hard for a very long time to be able to sustain a lifestyle that I might be comfortable with. And so I had just been accepted into the School of Management, the business school at University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And so I decided to stick with my acceptance there and never really looked too far behind, and I always had I'm quite goal oriented, and so tried to get as many internships as early on in my undergraduate career, and had internships with PwC as well as KPMG, and audited banks for a number of years. And after about 5 years, started a new department with a client in New York City, and was there for a couple of years, and then decided to return back to New Jersey, where I went to elementary school. And so now I am located in Ocean and Monmouth County in New Jersey, so quite close to the Jersey Shore. And here I'm with OceanFirst Bank as a principal accounting officer.
And in terms of your journey, I suppose, does any particular moment stand out for you the most?
There's been two, and usually they've taken me by surprise because, as most accountants and finance professionals, we are constantly, there's no doubt that we are by far one of the hardest working departments in any organization. Mm-hmm, We're definitely here to report accurate information, but also support the front office, whatever that might be. That may be your sales directors, that may be your, in my case, branch director, branch managers, as well as lending officers. But we still have our, especially with publicly traded companies, we've still got our regulatory filings to file, at a certain date SEC filings and anything else. And so, working hard and having a good work ethic is never short of anyone in these roles. But what's been sort of memorable for me in the, past years in my career is when people have, without me even applying or knowing, have recommended me for certain leadership positions or have recognized my leadership abilities, and also hard work and dedication to the profession as well as the organization. So with KPMG, that'd be being nominated. Usually there's an application process, but I was nominated without even knowing, to be a part of the Senior Associate Advisory Board. So you're sort of like a sounding board and a leadership council essentially for the senior associates in the New York office. And it was quite an honor to be one of, 10 or 15 to represent the entire senior associate class, which was hundreds of people, and not just within the financial services practice, but in also our other side of the practice, the metro practice. So that's more your manufacturing and commercial retail audit clients.
That's nuts. I mean, how does that come about in terms of being put forward without you knowing? I mean, what sort of things have to happen for those nominations to be made? Like, what things are you doing that are, encouraging people to make those nominations on your behalf without you knowing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I probably should have asked the person who nominated me because I didn't have a clue for a long time, and I think it wasn't until perhaps months later where I was trying to figure out who had nominated me, and I asked around, and a bunch of people said no, and then finally I found the person who did. And what was I doing? I worked extremely well with the client. I realized that we were in a client service industry, and while it was important for us to get the audit done, it was just as important, if not more important, to ensure that our clients were happy and not frustrated in dealing with us. And so I was somehow able to strike this balance of being quite demanding of client deliverables, and yet, I was quickly recognized to be the person as basically the gopher. Even if senior people needed something from a particular person, they would send me to go and ask for it or request it. And surely enough, within hours, we'd probably have the, whatever it was that we were asking for. And so I think there's a lot to be said about relationships and building those relationships. And I was quite fortunate to have sort of invested in my client relationships quite early on in my career. And this is probably atypical of perhaps others' experience within public accounting, in that I was on the HSBC accounts from my internship years through my last days at KPMG.
I'd love to get into your industry experience as well, particularly in financial services, but there are our listeners out there who are still in practice or maybe stepping from practice into industry. So, it's probably worth spending a bit more time on it, like in terms of if they're looking to get recognized, what sort of things could they be doing better to in effect get similar recognition that you did?
If I think back to my earlier years of my career, I was probably less shy or less sort of impacted by people's titles or hierarchy. And I treated everyone as an individual. And if I was special enough, or if I was important enough to be in the same room as anyone else, I would treat them as an equal. And so I was confident to be in my role. And so confidence, I think, would be key, especially early on in one's career. And also just treating anyone that you interact with as an individual. So yes, business is important, and talking about, you know, or going through the agenda is important, but just as important, getting to know what drives the individual. Is it really their work and their professional career, or is it their personal lives, or their hobbies? And so, if it's, yes, you're required to work, call it 50% of your time, maybe it's even 40% of your time awake, and, you know, 60% of that time may be training for a triathlon, or trying to become, I don't know, like a celebrity chef, or whatever that person's passion may be. And that that may drive up some very interesting conversation, especially if you have things in common. And before you know it, you've made a really good friend, and maybe someone to share those activities with, or those extracurricular activities with. Yeah, and really spending time building those relationships. You just never know what might come down the path later on. Not necessarily in their current role. They may start doing something else that's really neat in a field that you might be interested in. And if you're still playing golf together, if you're still doing triathlons together, or if you're cooking together, or taking photos together, whatever it might be, hey, you may be the next person. You may be their number two, and so I think that's really that's very cool.
Great bits of advice. It's interesting that you started the sort of this section of the conversation around accuracy and our completeness, but then ultimately the recognition, and I suppose a lot of the other success that follow comes from the more sort of human side outside of the numbers, which is really developing relationships, engaging with others, developing trust and familiarity, and who knows where that can lead, and maybe treating people with a bit of respect as an individual, and not being frightened of titles.
Oh, totally.
So that's great advice. And again, it's just one of those things that, for all the well structured and the great content in our accounting degrees and courses, qualifications and certifications, this type of insight just isn't really in there. And it's great you were able to share that with us, Angela. So thank you for doing that. So,
sure.
So look, I'd love to sort of maybe touch on maybe what's really exciting you about at the moment. There's a lot of change going on in financial services, and we're being impacted a lot by digital. But I mean, what's exciting you most about your work at the moment?
At the moment, change is the new norm. if you can picture that. And so to me, that's really exciting, because change means that there's opportunity. And opportunity is up to you in how you'd like to shape your career and your landscape. Yes, it's important to understand what the business or the organization's top priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you can create or leverage your strengths to support those goals, in whatever ways that may be, you'll I don't want to say easy, but there is a lot of opportunity for success, and for improvement, whether that's in organizational design, or if there's the ability to streamline processes, and even invest in and implement technology strategies, or software solutions to your organization, especially as, we've seen, or I've seen anyway, a lot of presentations around, how AI will, or is encroaching upon the accounting and finance industry, and the importance of sort of staying ahead of that curve, and being able to leverage those technology solutions, and also for us as professionals to change with the environment, almost in a chameleon-like way, and being able to work with and change sort of our roles as well in being adaptive to our environment. So that was a lot of words. And I think what I really mean to say is that there's disruption in the finance and accounting industry.
Of course.
And, how do we prevent ourselves from being sort of eliminated in the equation? Mm-hmm. And so there's, yes, robots and machine learning and all of that. There is importance and there are efficiencies to be gained, which is, always a hot topic for finance and accounting professionals. Efficiency, accuracy, and effectiveness. But there still needs to be a human component. And so, it's back to those relationships, but also providing the analysis and making those and helping our revenue drivers make good business decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I like the way you just complimented the efficiencies and continuously trying to drive out cost, but then immediately switched to revenue drivers, which I don't know. I mean, I just don't feel like accountancy and finance professionals have really maybe focused as much as we could have on those areas. And is that something that you identified in the business, or is that something that the business has come to you and said, look, we need some help on this?
Yeah, you're right. Usually accountants and finance professionals are more known to help drive costs out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're an overhead cost center. I mean, we should be pretty good at knowing cost, right?
Right.
Right. We're not like sales or anything on the front line, or customer service. We're the back office cost overhead, yeah, exactly. So yeah, we have a great reputation. We really should drink our own soup or Kool-Aid, as they say on that one. So it's interesting that you said revenue drivers, because that's really where we need to be going, I think, in terms of we want to sustain our presence in a business longer term.
And if we are working in a growth mode, mm-hmm. The way to grow is not by cutting costs. Yes, costs have to be maintained.
Of course.
But the way you're going to grow your business is by increasing revenue. Mm-hmm. And to be a part of that decision making is so critical and very important, especially in a company or any company that wants to improve itself, which I would imagine that if you're in business today, that's probably a focus of yours. And so it's empowering to have that switch in mindset and to, and to sort of shed that the mentality of always being we're just a cost center. We're not contributing to the top line. Guess what? We can, for banks anyway. There are different ways of earning income. So yes, interest income is one way. Perhaps there's, depending on what kind of financial institution you are, you may have trading revenue as well. But also in, miscellaneous fees and analyzing your fee schedule and fee income recognized, you may identify that there are different ways to structure how clients are charged. And all of that comes with, guess what? If we do have, really good AI or any kind of technology to help analyze that set of data, then we'll be able to arrive at a solution even faster. So, there's no reason why we should be afraid of technology or machine learning. We should embrace it so we can become better at our jobs and be a revenue driver. It was a partner in it.
Well, exactly. If not a revenue driver, definitely a partner. It was just, as you were describing the income opportunities there, and I was sort of like, wouldn't it be a great tagline for the all accountants and finance professionals to sort of say, don't just cut costs, grow revenue and grow your career, because if we grow the top line, there's more opportunities then hitting the business. I mean, how cool is that? And
Yeah, Andrew, I think you're onto something.
no, I think I should share the credit on that one now, Angela. That's but but no. In all fairness, you brought us onto the topic, so I just thought that was interesting how the conversation developed. And like in terms of one thing that's really impressed me is that, like, we're both young people, and in terms of your career, you're succeeding as a young female executive. So in terms of on that journey in finance. Is there sort of any sort of pointers or tips you could share perhaps with our audience who also want to be similarly successful as a young female executive?
There is merit to being hardworking. You do, we do have to show that first. Being hardworking, being committed to your career. Hey, and maybe my path is not similar to all female accounting and finance professionals. But I think that treating yourself as an equal to a male, speaking just as loudly, if not louder, than the men in your organization, or even outside, and knowing that you do bring value to the conversation. I mean, there are so many articles out there talking about how, hey, you know what, companies with more females on their boards have higher stock returns, and how there is a real shortfall of female board members. And certainly, so there's an awareness in the marketplace of this, of sort of this, if you want to call it an issue. And so, the issue or the shortfall has been identified. So the opportunity is ours to seize it. And so if that is a goal of yours, and it certainly is of mine, make it known, tell as many people as you can that, hey,
Definitely.
Look, I do want to serve on a board, whether it's a nonprofit or, if you want to be a paid board member. And if it is your goal to be in the C-suite, be clear about what it is that you want and what you're looking for. It shouldn't be a secret, right? Because the more people that know about your goals and aspirations, if something comes down the pike, then you'll be top of mind for them to reach out to, right? So, building your brand and really putting it out there.
Well, exactly. I mean, look, if you've taken the time to invest in building good quality relationships at work, people like you, and you let them know what opportunities you're interested for, it's just like any business that where people get referred or businesses get referred, you'll be top of mind. So it's really good practical advice. I mean, and how hard is that, like, to follow up, for our audience? So I encourage everyone, listening to this podcast to follow through what Angela's just shared with us. I mean, that's just good common sense, but sometimes you just need to hear it or have it reinforced for us that this is doable, this is achievable.
Yeah, totally. And if I can add, because this is top of mind for me, don't be afraid of being a bitch at work. And
Strong
what
words.
I mean by that is you don't need to be a jerk, but the confidence thing, and sometimes it's important to show that, hey, what you say is what you mean. And especially, women versus men, generally speaking, especially for me, it's a personal challenge to speak in literally a louder volume, and sort of command that equal presence. It's important to believe in yourself and to be committed every day as you present yourself. And so if there's something you believe very strongly in, don't be afraid to back down. And what's helpful is to, perhaps build a, support group as you go into these battles.
Yes.
Before you do get into the meeting room. And so it's you have support when you do enter the room.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. But then those support groups have come from all the work that's been done on the relationships and people understanding
Yes.
your value. Because then,
Yes.
again, I think when it comes to speaking a bit louder, that's just demonstrating the integrity that our profession and our position within our company's demands. I mean, we're there to ensure completeness and accuracy, and that's just integrity of the business, underlying business numbers. And in terms of having integrity to ourselves, it's just living our purpose, and living who we want to be and being ourselves. So that's why I just don't see any issue with doing that. But some of us have cowered away from perhaps best representing ourselves and what we can offer in those moments. And just to share with our listeners, don't be afraid, and only good
Yeah.
things will tend to happen in the longer run from those things. So that's a great advice, Angela. I'd love to sort of jump into some other questions. Before I do, like you did mention earlier, you're fairly goal orientated. So when it comes to the career and succeeding, how do you then not lose sight of perhaps what's important in life as well?
That's a very good question. So while, my work and career is very important to me, and I think what I've recently realized is, and I think just with spending some time self-reflecting, time outside of the office is just as important, if not more important. See, if you're not healthy mentally or physically, then you cannot be your best self in the office.
Definitely.
And so it's so important to recharge, and to really, I found it quite helpful to truly separate, my time outside of the office and my time in the office. And sure, there are times when there needs to be some overlap, but if you are being fully rejuvenated and recharged when you're not at work, then I think just overall, you'll be a better performer when you are in the office. And so, it depends on what works for you. But for me to be unplugged when I'm not here, it really helps me perform at a much higher level when I am sitting at my desk. And so my personal relationships, friendships, family, mental health, physical health are very important to me. And when those things start to slide, so does my performance at work. And so, I'm not necessarily talking about living a balanced life, because it's not possible to live a balanced life. It's, I think, just what's important to you at a particular point in time. And so it's really being self-aware and knowing what is critical to you. And so if someone in your family is sick, and if more time needs to be devoted there, make that known to your employer, to your boss, to your team. And look, people love to help, and people are good human beings.
So true.
And if that's what you need, people will support you. And there are times when that will shift, right? Someone else on your team may need additional support, and I'm sure that you will rise to the occasion when that, or if that were to happen. And so that's what being a team is about.
That's such excellent advice. Look, there's Angela, for our listeners, would there be any particular maybe book or audio book, maybe documentary or movie even, that you'd recommend to our audience?
Especially for those who are new in their careers. New in their careers, new in their position, new in an organization. I really like, there's this book called The First 90 Days. And even if you're in the same organization, you may be in a different role, it's critical to know what's required of you to have a successful career in that role or in that position, or in an organization. And it's not always necessarily in the first 90 days. I think it's also a good refresher every now and then, just to get a pulse for what is important, And that may change,
Yes.
in depending on the phase of the organization or your role.
Oh, completely.
So that's a book I would strongly recommend. And then in terms of documentaries, I love the new Planet Earth.
Oh, wow.
Series.
They've been going for years.
It's
They're
just
so good.
beautifully filmed.
Yeah, exactly. Talk about unplugging. What a way to unplug, right?
Yeah.
Oh, lads. Yeah, no, that's great. So I'm delighted you threw that one in there because, the more practical resources we have, the better. And I actually would support that as well. I've loved Planet Earth since, I think I first saw the first one, about 10 years ago now. So it's a great show.
Yeah.
And you learn loads
Right.
as well, It's amazing what you learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh dear. So,
Very cool.
so look, Angela, you've been a great guest for us. Really appreciate you sharing the insights. And should any of our audience wish to try and connect with you, what's the best way or where's the best place they can find you at?
Oh yeah, please. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. The name comes up as Angela Ho, I think CPA, CGMA. I'm based out of New Jersey, so you'll see that. I'm also graduating from the Warren School of Business this May, and so I think that's in my title as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, I'll put your contact profile up on the show notes as well. And look, we really appreciate you investing your time with us in the show. And as I said, you've been great guest, some great advice, particularly about building relationships and being a bitch in a good way. So love how candid you were, and you've been very successful to date. And I know you're going to go on to even bigger and better things. So Angela, thanks for being such a great guest today on our show, and wish you all the best into the future.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Thanks for the time.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding, and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities, and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.